If you want to learn how to make this embroidered greeting card, just keep watching. Before we start the learnings, make sure you hit subscribe and hit that bell notification. I got my little Fiskars paper cutter thing, but you can always use just a simple pair of scissors, but this is the one I used. Next, you're going to need an eraser, a pencil, a pair of scissors, a thread needle, a ruler, and then I had this envelope lying around, so we're going to use this in order to get the measurements for our card that we're going to make. And you're going to need some cardstock. I'll be sure to put the supplies in the description box below. Next, you're going to take your envelope if you have one, and what I like to do is put it up against the actual envelope, and I like to give it some room on either side, like a centimeter. I don't know, I'm not good with rulers, but just enough so that it's smaller than the actual envelope and it can fit inside of it. Once you have that, mark it on your cardstock. And by the way, they always say measure twice and only cut once. So that's what I did. So now I'm going to cut it. For the folding of the card, I'm going to use my cutter again, but I'm also going to use this embossing tool that I got from Cricut that helps with the folding. But first, I'm going to make sure I'm going to have this even when I fold it in half. So I'm just measuring it and making sure it's even. Okay, so it's even now. So now I'm going to take and make sure where I have those marks at, I'm going to put the card cutter, and there is a recessed area right here. So when I'm using this emboss tool, I'm just going to press inside that recessed area to emboss it and make a little mark. And now it will be easy for me to fold at that mark. Boom. And if you find that it is even on all corners, but then there's a little bit left over, you can always cut that off. Now's a good time to check to see if your card fits inside your envelope, and if it does, thumbs up. You just made a card. Okay, you can take it out now. You can't send a blank card now. Let's figure out what we want the front to say. I decided that I wanted to say thanks, so I penciled that out. And I had a little bit of room underneath the thanks, and so I wanted to sketch out this little pot with an aloe plant in it. I think that's an aloe plant. I don't even know my plants. Okay, at this point it is what it is. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now you're going to take your needle, and first we're going to sketch out the word thanks. And so that's really self-explanatory. You just poke holes in along the lines of the letters. Now it should look like this, and now we're going to start on the plant part. Now I want to point out that you really would want to keep your line straight when you're poking these holes, because that way later on when you're stitching it up, the lines would be straight when they're stitched. So should look like this. Now let's stitch this up. Yeah, I picked these colors, but obviously I'm probably gonna change all these colors again, but I use this color for the thanks part, and then I got my greens for my aloe plant. We're gonna call it an aloe plant, okay? And I'm sticking to it. But before we get started with the stitching part, grab your eraser and start erasing those lines because you can still see them. And once you stitch it up, you're not going to be able to erase. So erase those lines. So now at this point, you can just see the holes. So we're going to get started on the thanks part. And when I embroidered or stitched these up, I ended up using all 6 strands of the embroidery thread. So I'm going to start by threading it on the needle. If you're familiar with embroidery stitches and terminology, this wouldn't be surprising to you, but what I used was a back stitch where you go in one stitch and then you go back into a stitch before it. For some reason I just did that, but if you're not familiar with it, just stitch it like regular, how you feel comfortable doing it. That's just something I'm familiar with doing. It was just a habit. So what I did here was I just went in one stitch, came out the other, and then I tied it in a knot in the back on the inside where you can't see it from the front. Now from this point, you're going to tie a knot on the back. Now you can move on to your next color. Now this is what it looks like so far. At this point, I noticed that my camera had cut out, but what cut out was the fact that I decided to add a little bit more lines in the pot so that it looks a little bit different and it has more filler inside of it. Now I'm changing to the pot color, and now I'm going to go and stitch that up. Now we're gonna knot off our work here. Now here's our final product. I kind of feel like if you do things handmade, that it seems like it's so much better than store-bought. That's just my opinion. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe, you like, you comment. Make sure you go to the description box to find out all the supplies you need for this project. And as always, thank you for watching. Didn't I already say that? Oh gosh.